The alt-right's latest scapegoat, trans kids, are once again the target of conservative propaganda and biased legislation. Recently, the issue of trans athletes has been a hot-button conservative talking point, with anti-trans ads and bigoted rhetoric playing a major role in the 2024 presidential election. At the same time, Alberta's United Conservative Party has introduced three new bills that target trans kids. The Fairness and Safety in Sport Act aims to prevent trans youth from participating in high school sports. This is Dave Rubin, a right-wing influencer on Piers Morgan's show, peddling the same antiquated arguments we've heard all too well before.
Listen, most parents actually want to defend their daughters and don't want them to have the crap kicked out of them by boys, and they don't want them to be playing boys in soccer or any of these other things. That is a defense of girls. If someone, as an adult, 18, 21, we can discuss the age, wants to dress how they want, have any surgeries, take whatever drugs, do whatever they want with their body, most people, even Republicans, don't object to that. And I have no problem referring to Brianna as she, because I can clearly sense she would treat me with respect and I'll treat her with respect. And it's a two-way street rather than pandering and bowing to a bunch of people that could not give a crap about anybody else.
Yeah, and David,
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a few things I'd like to address there. Again, we've heard this all before. It's the same restructured arguments that the gay community has been fighting for 40 plus years. Back in 1982, the US Department of Defense issued a policy stating that homosexuality was incompatible with military service. In 1993, when Bill Clinton tried to overturn that same bill, the rhetoric from the conservative part of America was parroting things like this quote: "Would you want your son, daughter, or grandchild sharing a shower, foxhole, or blood with a homosexual?" Yeah, this was from a report from 2005. But what I really want to debunk here is that Dave Rubin and the conservatives at large actually care about women's sports, even a little bit. This is from a ESPN article covering the trans issue. And this quote here: "What was very telling for me was a comment by the parents who said, 'We know there's other transgender girls running, but we don't care about them because they're not winning.'" Yeah. Funny how it's always about who's winning when we're dealing with conservatives and Republicans. There's another very important quote from this ESPN article. "The perception that transgender females dominate the sprinting landscape of indoor and outdoor track in Connecticut is grossly misrepresented. And that's also true, in my opinion, throughout the country." So what can we say about trans athletes in America specifically? Most trans athletes aren't overperforming in high school sports. And of course not. Why would a trans athlete be overperforming in high school sports? We aren't talking about the Olympics or professional sports where victory is made in the margins. We're talking about kids' sports where this might be their first opportunity to actually participate in sports, and it is based and winning or not winning is based primarily on skill, not whether or not you have an XY chromosome or a little bit more testosterone than your opponent. So you may be asking, if it were about fairness, what actually plays a role in the success of high school sports teams? You'll love this one, I promise. This is a Forbes article that details what are some of the best indicators for whether or not high school sports teams will win state championships. And I want to take us down to this quote here. So, schools that had less than 40% of its students receiving free or reduced price meals won 557 North Carolina High School Athletic Association championships during the period studied. Schools with 60% and above won 112 titles. The few schools where more than 80% of the students received free or reduced price meals, won only 10 state crowns. So the article goes into detail about how reduced price meals is an indicator of wealth inequality in the United States. Now, it elaborates that wealth inequality is one of the biggest indicators as to whether or not a school produces athletes that tend to win championships or not. So we've already established that trans kids don't overperform in high school sports, and we've also established now that the best indicator for whether or not a school sports team is going to be successful is whether or not they come from affluent neighborhoods, or whether or not they come from impoverished neighborhoods. So if we really were honest with ourselves and we wanted to have a talk about fairness in sports, we'd be talking about income inequality. And conservatives talking about income inequality, yeah, that's not going to happen. But we're not, because it's not about fairness. It's never been about fairness in sports. Additionally, there are numerous studies that show participating in sports increases academic achievement and is great for mental health. So by denying our trans kids access to sports, we are disproportionately disadvantaging them in their academic careers, as well as harming their mental health, which, in case you didn't know, for trans kids is kind of a big issue. But I really want to put this in perspective for everyone. To go back to that ESPN article, it gives us an upper estimate for how many trans athletes there are in the United States, and it estimates that there are around 35,000 trans athletes, which represent less than 0.5% of all high school athletes. So, to a first degree approximation, Canada has about 1/10 the population of the United States, and Alberta has about 1/10 the population of Canada. So if we are translating from the upper echelon of estimates of trans athletes in the United States down to how many athletes or children the UCP bill will impact, we get a total of 350 children across the entirety of the province who this bill is aimed at. 350 kids. 350 kids that the Conservative Party thinks should not be allowed to play sports. 350 kids that are not allowed to socialize, make friends, pursue their dreams and their passions. It's genuinely disgusting. And to me, the most disgusting part, and this is going to be a recurring theme for some of my videos in the future, is this kind of false equity or idea of false access that the right-wing conservative ideologies put into their bills to make you believe that they are going to allow access is just separate from the rest of us. The United Conservative Party bill states that it will support the formation of additional co-ed divisions, inclusive of transgender athletes. The only problem, we've already established that this impacts at an upper level around 350 trans kids. And there are some 740 high schools in Alberta. So are these trans-friendly co-ed divisions going to be equally funded as the not trans-friendly co-ed divisions? Because if they're not, then again, we have this separation of fairness amongst the co-ed divisions and the not co-ed divisions. Also, what happens when a trans kid enters high school that doesn't have a co-ed division? How long is it going to take to set that up? Can they just do it immediately, or is it going to be multiple years, in which case, what is the point of trying to do it anyway, because they are going to graduate before they can ever participate in the sport that they want to participate in? So right-wingers and conservatives, they They really like to hide behind the terms like fairness and inclusivity to make you think that their position is reasonable, all the while erecting functionally insurmountable barriers to access for the minority. So, trans kids, they're going to say it's all about women's sports, even though we've established that it has nothing to do with women's sports. They're going to say they will support the addition of co-ed sports leagues, even though doing so is basically never going to achieve equity for trans kids in our schools. And additionally, I'll just remind everyone that the Conservative government has spent how many countless thousands of dollars putting together a bill all to keep 350 trans kids from being happy. It's not and has never been about women's sports. Stay tuned for part 2, where we talk about the other 2 UCP bills that target trans kids.